So today we are welcoming May, and I'm not sure if anybody saw the little video post that I did today on Facebook, but I said we're going to have Sherry Krause with us, and Sherry's here. And I said I'm going to have Tammy Sharp with us, and Tammy's here. So we're representing the West Coast today. We'll have some updates from the West Coast. And I also mentioned that I was going to have a little bit of a rant today. So I'm going to save my rant until the end of our conversation. But yes, it's there's been a couple of reminders about what we can be doing in this time, and I'm going to go off a little bit about how fucking important it is to get this stuff done. Excuse my French. So I'll save my rant until we've had a bit of an update, and then I'm sure Tammy and Sherry will support me a little bit on what I'm going to rant about.
We've got your back, Eliza. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's awesome. So yes, I think it's high time to keep on track and keep moving forward and keep going. And with the events of the last few days, and then another one today, it's just another good reminder of how precious this time is and how we have to value it, because we never know when it's not going to be here anymore. So I won't say any more until we get to the end of our rant. But Sherry's got some slides to share. Sherry, you were in a BC Real Estate Association webinar yesterday, is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
And you have some.
It was entitled, "Is This Time Different?" Or am I muted? Hang on. Oh no, there I am.
Nope, we can hear you.
Is this time different? It's about recession and the housing market. So it was quite good. So I picked out a few slides. So if you want to let me share, I can share.
Yes, that would be great. So I'm going to hand over the power.
About that.
I'm going to hand over the power to Sherry.
Yeah, BC and Victoria. Okay, where do I find the share thing here?
Give me 1 sec. I'm just going to make you the presenter, and you're going to get a little.
Show my screen.
There you go. You are now the presenter, so you can show your screen.
No, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that magic.
Okay, except that I'm at the end, so hang on. I just got to bring myself all the way up to the top. Okay.
Beautiful. Look at that.
Oops. I just got to get rid of us somehow. Not us, but just get my screen going. Okay, so basically, yeah, it was just looking at oh, hang on, I've got the wrong one up. Ah, that's cool, hey? I have the wrong one. So okay. I need to get back into this one, which is this. Oh, well, I'll just, hang on.
I've got it up on my screen as well, Sherry, if you need mine.
Okay, do you want to put it up? Because I've got.
Yep. I will do that. So I will take back the power.
Yeah, sorry.
The power. That's okay. And make me the presenter. And I will show my screen.
Okay.
And let me know if you can see it.
If you're not there, this is actually it. If everybody can still see it. But.
Yeah. Is that the one? Can you see it, Tammy?
Yes. This is the one. Great. Okay. Perfect. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. It's technology.
Yeah, I'm not used to it.
We're growing every week. This week we can see Tammy's face, so we're
it's good.
We're getting there.
This is just because we're talking more about recessions. So recessions are things that happen. So GDP is really important. So this is just a tracking measure of our GDP. So this is BC. And you can see this goes all the way back to 1998. You can see this is the 2008 is the big dip. So you can see we were trucking along and we were already starting to come down a little bit. We actually entered a recession in February. We were at 1.4%. And then of course, COVID hit and we're minus 4.1. So it's not horrific, but it's definitely there to think that we're not in a recession. We are. So anyway, I need to go to the next screen. And, how do nope, went too far.
This one?
No, so the second one, whichever that is this it?
Is it this one? Yeah, this was the first one.
This was the one I just did, sorry. There,
that's okay.
Unemployment spiking, yes, okay.
Okay, yeah.
There you go. So you can see the blue line is Canada and the yellow line is BC. You can see we aren't as bad as other provinces, which is kind of nice actually. But definite unemployment is spiking, and that's always a concern. One of the things we have to really remember is that a lot of the unemployment that's happening is on the lower end of the job scale, right? And that's why people are having trouble paying rent and everything else, because they're usually lower wage earners who are living paycheck to paycheck and having trouble. So that's the bulk of where unemployment is coming from. Anyway, but that is the concern, is that even when things go, how quickly will the unemployment rate go down, because some of those jobs will not come back, right? So I need the next one.
My goodness, so demanding.
I know. So the most vulnerable BC industries are actually, I thought this was quite interesting because this is Victoria versus BC. Accommodation and food services, of course, is number one. Entertainment, you know, cultural stuff, and then retail and wholesale trades. So of course, we're above the average in the province, except for retail and wholesale, because we're so tourism based. And I guess we eat out a lot. But it's interesting because if you look at recessions, recessions normally happen when there's a contraction in the economy. And that usually starts with things like construction, home starts. It usually is manufacturing. Everything starts to contract. This has not been a normal start of a recession. Our recession has gone deep because of a health crisis. And so it's affecting different industries. Like here in BC, construction hasn't shut down. We've got construction going. We've got housing starts. We've got building happening. Lots of pre-sales still going on. A lot of the normal things that happen are there, which is why they're sort of expecting that we could recover quicker and have a much quicker rebound than we would in a normal recession. But we can just have a look at the next slide. You know, and I also was going to say that, you know, a lot of the jobs that are being lost are not necessarily a lot of people who can afford to buy into our market. I think it's affected more renters than it has actually home purchasers. People may have to sell because they've got themselves into trouble. But here, this is about the GDP and how fast are we going to get back to things. So this is a U-shaped recovery. There's a V-shaped recovery. And then there's what happened in 2008, 2009, what their recovery was like. The best case scenario is if we do a V-shaped recovery, because by the end of the fourth quarter, or by, sorry, the beginning of the fourth quarter, we'd be back up to 98% of where we were pre-COVID. The U-shape is going to take longer. You know, we'll probably be looking at towards the end, the spring of 2022 or the end of 2021. Because it'll be a little bit slower, but we're not super tanking, which I think is the comfort level that I got from this, is how can we show some people that we're not super tanking, right? Okay, you can go down to the next one for me. So just like we flattened the, you know, the COVID curve, the virus, we want to flatten the recession curve. And he talked about, which I thought was really good, like if we don't do anything, our recovery could be quite a bit longer. And this is why people wonder, why is the government pouring out all this money, and why is this and why is that? These three things need to happen in order to flatten this recession curve. If it didn't, we'd be dead, right? So the first thing was to ensure workers can remain employed and collect paychecks, right? So if they couldn't initially from their job, they had to provide the emergency funds. And you know, whether you get second phase is getting better, easier borrowing terms, and then support for the financial system so that they don't get stuck with a bunch of bad loans, right? Both the consumer and the institutions, in order to try to shorten this. So the government has definitely taken steps to try to do this. Now, I didn't hear the Premier's announcements today about what the plan is to open for BC, so I'm talking without that knowledge at this point, but he was to make that announcement, I think, at 3 o'clock today. On to the next one. So we are looking at flattening the recession curve, which is nice. So here's the stimulus. So in 2008-2009 crisis, there was a $3,000 stimulus package, or 3% as compared to the 9% that we're doing now. So you can see there's a lot more happening because there's a lot more people that are in critical danger with our unemployment spiking the way it is. So as though it's awful, and yes, all this money is going to have to be recouped from somewhere, which is usually taxes or whatever, right? But it's necessary in order for us not to have a total collapse. And then the next one, we're going to move into more real estate. So I think we mostly know the mortgage thing here. The prime rate is sitting at the 2.45%. So you can see we dropped quite significantly. The economists out there don't see this moving for 12 to 18 months, right? But it'll be after that we'll probably start to see rising interest rates, but we're not going to see it spike at the beginning because it would harm everything. So anyway, that's where mortgage rates are at versus the 5-year GIC or bond rate or Government of Canada bond rate. Okay, next one. So here are the gray horizontal lines here are previous recessions. So this was back in the 81, 82, the early 90s, and then the 2008 when things started to decline. And you can see, by the big arrows where everything fell. So the blue line is the residential sales in BC. The yellow line is what actually happened in Victoria. And, it kind of followed, but we didn't always fall the same amount as BC in general. We're pretty stable here. But you can see that we always tend to rebound fairly quickly or have a bit of a bounce. And then it kind of tends to lag again and have another drop that takes a bit longer to recover. And we're not really expecting that we're going to see much different than that here, in all honesty. Because of the demand that we have in Victoria right now. The next slide will sort of give you an idea of where we're looking to head. So this was unit sales seasonally adjusted during all sorts of things, but really what we're looking at is the yellow line is COVID-19, and then we have this baseline is pre-COVID. And then we have like what happened in all of the various recessions that we've had, where you'll have a big drop and then you have a spike and then it drops again. And then moving on from that, because I don't want to get too caught up in all of that, but where are we likely headed? This is my final slide, which talks about, this is what happens to home sales historically the year following the start of a recession. So our recession is starting in 2020. So, the year following would be 2021, and we might have it quicker than that. But if you look here, this was 1982, the year after the 1981. Again, this is BC, this is Victoria, the yellow is Victoria. This was 1991 after the 1990 recession. And then this was 2009, sorry, after 2008. You'll see we bounced back fairly quick. And in 2009, we actually we were equal or just slightly more than BC. So Victoria does come back. And I thought this was good to share today to have people, there's a lot of fear still out there in regards to, oh my God, the market's going to crash, or all of those sorts of things. And yes, we don't have a crystal ball, but remember, real estate in general is long-term. And if you're looking at doing and getting into the market long-term, there's good opportunities out there, but do not expect in the Victoria area to see our prices falling in April, right? We just finished the month of April, and our prices on both single-family dwellings and condos actually increased in April. Our number of sales were like 50% or 58% less than what they were a year ago, but our price is higher. Yeah.
There you go. That really says something, doesn't it?
I know.
Yeah. It's
So-
interesting, and Tammy and I were having a good conversation yesterday, and it's nice to see graphs like this, because it really does give you a picture of what it looks like. And I know, Tammy, you're going to give us a bit of an update. We were talking a little bit about West Vancouver yesterday, how it's such a unique spot, you know, really in Canada, maybe even in the world. And you know, when you look at something like these shots of Victoria and in fact BC, and I guess, you know, probably in 2009 in Vancouver, the housing starts were probably higher, you know, because when we look at all of the construction in Vancouver over the last 10 years, I mean, it's just been, you know, everybody who lives in Vancouver and all the surrounding areas talk about, they just every day they can't believe how much construction is going on, and that seems to be something that has been said, you know, probably for 15 or 20 years now, and the vacancy rate is still, you know, below 2% generally. So it's
sure.
interesting.
The other thing that I would sort of point out to people is, remember, if you're listening to news stories, are they talking about the Canadian real estate market? Are they talking about BC? Are they talking about Vancouver? Because Canada is a very big country. I mean, look at how many cases Quebec's getting versus New Brunswick, for example, and BC. I mean, we're all so different, and the real estate markets are very, very local. And so I find that sometimes people will hear a news story, and if you peel it back, they're talking about Toronto, or they're talking about Ontario predominantly is what they're taking their data from. And you can't base your real estate decisions based on what's going on in the Ontario market, or trying to average that out over Canada. It's very, very difficult to do that. So, you know, if you're interested in a specific area, make sure that you check out what's going on in that area, because it'll be different. I mean, Vancouver's different than Victoria, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it goes back to a couple of things, you know, just to reiterate, not following just the headlines, right? The headlines are always, you know, they always give the best picture or the worst picture, and to just look at the headlines, you're not getting the true picture. And going back to the fundamentals, right? Like in Victoria, we're talking about how our tourism is being so greatly impacted, and that's going to have a big effect. But the number of tech companies that are moving into Victoria, the shipbuilding contracts, the government workers. I mean, one thing that is for sure, as we start to come out of this COVID crisis, governments are going to probably be hiring contractors to help with all kinds of things, right? So there may be more government people moving into cities, government cities, for a short term. There will be a new economy, or a slightly moderate economy, or a changing economy, and it's important to look at all of the pieces of that economy, not just, you know, one industry such as tourism, which, yes, it's huge here on the West Coast, and particularly in Vancouver and Victoria. But it's, you know, I don't even think tourism was Victoria's biggest sector over the last few years. I think it's been overtaken by tech.
Tech is larger.
Years. So it's tech is just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And as we start to shift into this moving into working from home and being in our cars less, and so many people are saying things like, I'm loving not driving, I'm loving this simpler life. It'd be interesting, you know, with all of the people who are watching, how many people have been saying to yourself or your family, you know, I've really simplified my life and it's actually pretty good. I could keep going like this. So it's I've heard that over and over and over again from friends and family saying, yeah, my life has gotten simpler, and I'm actually enjoying it. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But yes, don't just follow the headlines, get back into the fundamentals. And when you have great data like this that Sherry's just shared with us, that's specific and based on, you know, history and other recessions, then you've got data that you can compare. So you know, one of the things that the headlines don't do is, you know, they say, you know, 30,000 people die of X, and what they don't say is that's a 50% of improvement over the 60,000 people that we lost last year. So it's always important to have data and have the comparatives so you can actually understand what the data is telling you. So this was a great piece of data. Thanks, Sherry. This is
You're
helpful. Yeah. Anything else you want to share with us about what's going on in Victoria before I turn it over to Tammy?
Not really. There has been a way uptick in activity. And people just want to get out there and get on with their life and realize the world hasn't totally stopped. We've been paused for a lot of things, but things are still happening. And I know, like on the island here, we have been very blessed compared to even the rest of BC. With we had 2 days in a row now with no new cases on the whole island, which has been good. I do have concerns about if they open the US border too soon. I have a friend who works at the Chamber of Commerce whose main duty is to get emails and phone calls from people who are inquiring about Victoria. And the one day she posted a little rant because she got 3 calls that day from US people, this was last week, wanting to inquire about coming here on holidays, and were stunned to find out that we were shut down, that the tourist attractions and everything, and we have a quarantine if we do come into the country. And they were like, what? And she's like, yeah, and the borders are shut down till May 22nd. And they're like, well, how do we get around this whole quarantine thing? We only want to be there for 5 days. And it's like, it's not happening, people. Like,
wow,
where have you been? And so be away from just the US news because it's always more drama, number one. It's very, very, very political. I mean, Canada's been getting very political for my liking. But it's just like, let's just keep focused on how do we move forward? How do we take care of each other and go from there, right? So that's my end.
Awesome. That's amazing about people, not knowing that the border is shut down. Yeah, you really have to be cloistered to not know that there's a
well, the US doesn't always report a lot of things outside of what they want you to hear on their stations, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So before I turn it over to Tammy, I just want to check in on some of the questions and the comments. Thank you for your hellos. We've got Debbie from Saskatchewan and Barb from sunny Victoria. She says with lilacs and cherry blossoms, and Lisa says hello from Toronto, and Arlene is in Port Moody, and Nikki is in Victoria, and Maggie is in Victoria. Oh, and she just watched the Premier's announcement, a 4-stage reopening. So I didn't have a chance to watch it beforehand either, but I'm sure we'll be checking that out. And Christine actually says, 4-stage reopening from the Premier. Lynn, hi Lynn Trevisan, who's usually on the webinars with us. In Toronto says, thanks Sherry, this is great information. Lynn loves graphs. I know you love graphs, right Lynn?
Yeah.
And Christine says, this is encouraging news. Thanks, Sherry. And Lynn says, yes, you know me. So fun. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for posting and sharing. I'm getting the hang of this question box now. I mean, we're really mastering this thing. We've got Tammy, who we can actually see. We've got slideshows, and we've got questions mastered. So things are good. So Tammy, you and I were having a great conversation yesterday and talking about how, kind of unlike the piece that Sherry shared which was all very positive, we were talking about how, there's things that are saying the economy's not going to recover for ages and it's going to be so much worse than we could have ever imagined. And we were talking about West Van because I had heard, I haven't had a chance to dive into it yet, but I had seen, prices in West Van selling for $250,000 to $300,000 under assessed or under listing. So we were having a good old conversation about what's happening here in Vancouver. So Tammy, do you want to share your thoughts and insights into what the hell's going on?
Well, so first I agree 100%. The market isn't going to crash per se. I spend about 2 hours each day now in my new luxury profession here with a bit more time on my hands, although last week I've gotten crazy busy again. So I spend about 2 hours a day reading everything I can get my hands on, all the different economists. Brendan Ogmanson is the chief economist for the BC Real Estate Association, who created that presentation there. And everything the GBR, the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver is also, everyone's being very positive and upbeat, and it's not so bad, and this and that and the other thing. And then you go over to, I found a report today, it's an excellent report actually, from CIBC and their economists there. I read it today, it's only about 3 pages long. And they have differing opinions. Anyway, so, you know, there's a lot of factors going on here, which, as you know, impact the real estate market. Jobs, of course, being important, but you have to look at both sides. So the supply side and the demand. You were referring to, Liza, to development and how that's going forward. A lot of the developers are actually stalling their openings or have pulled their projects offline right now for sales, and developments are also not going forward, a lot of them. I think last month there wasn't one new development announced in the North Shore. So we have to wait and see what that's going to look like. That's part of the supply side. The thing that would cause a market crash, so we've seen demand get pulled down before with, for example, the foreign buyer tax implementation and also the mortgage stress test, okay, which is what caused our last dip because people could qualify for much less. And those were all demand side initiatives, not a lot on the supply side. So we didn't see markets, we saw correction, but not a crash. And from what I'm understanding, a true crash would have to be supply also, so demand dropping and supply increasing. So you've got this huge divergence. So not just demand dropping, but supply increasing massively. And the only way that that potentially could happen with respect to, or as it pertains to COVID, would be foreclosures. So people unable to make payments on their mortgages anymore. They've maybe over leveraged themselves and lost their jobs, and now they can't make payments. And the other would be panic selling. People realize that they're short on money, and the only way that they can solve their problem is to sell their home. So we have yet to see whether or not, you know, those kinds of things are going to happen. And I think I'm telling a lot of my clients who are inquiring with me that I'm calling it, you can call it we're frozen, you can call it we're treading water, I'm calling it we're in a bubble. The government of Canada has wrapped us in a nice bubble wrap, you know, so that we can bounce around and not get hurt and not pay our mortgages and not pay our hydro bills. And, you know, one friend of mine, she's like, I'm loving this. I'm not paying my mortgage. I'm riding my bike every day, you know. So people are in this sense of, I don't want to call it a false sense of security, but I think it could be, depending on who you are and how seriously you take your financial commitments. So right now, during the bubble, where we're being protected by the government, people aren't freaking out because we're not feeling we haven't all been told, okay, you must now pay your mortgage and you must pay all those bills, and oh, by the way, your taxes are due. So we've had a break on all of those fronts. So one of the articles I read today said that, you know, their prediction was that by the end of August, the bubble is going to burst and we're all going to be faced with our new reality, whatever that looks like, whether or not you have a job, whether or not your business was able to sustain itself, et cetera, et cetera. Your mortgage will become payable again, bills will become payable, and your taxes will become due. So the bubble will be over. So back to the supply and demand. So the demand side is how many people will be able to continue to qualify for their mortgages? Has their down payment been eroded due to the stock market decline? So that's the job side. And then on the supply side, are they going to be, is there going to be panic selling? Are there going to be deals? And are the developers going to be continuing to supply new product? So we have yet to see what that's going to look like. The other thing that honestly has been propping up, in my opinion, the entire Canadian real estate market is immigration. And we had huge projections this year. I think Trudeau wanted 355,000 immigrants to come. We don't know what that's going to look like now. Are they even welcome? Are they opening the borders? Do people want to come here? So we are way off track now with the immigration numbers. And, you know, honestly, I think Canada has a negative birth rate. So without immigration, there's, you know, we have no growth per se in the demand for housing in the market. So that also is going to be, you know, so, and most of the immigrants come with either a plan to buy or some savings immediately to purchase. Okay, so that has been a large source of demand. So we've got business bankruptcies, we've got potential foreclosures, personal foreclosures, which will tick up. I mean, some people are just not going to make it. Okay, I don't see it's going to be drastic. But one of the projections was, so foreclosures, if you go to, if you Google it, the Canadian foreclosure rate for primary residence, across Canada, it's about 1/4%. I think it's 0.24 to 0.25, and it varies by province. I think they're projecting it might go up to 0.4. Right now, April, it actually went down. The foreclosure rate went down in April because nobody's not making payments. But they expect that to change when money becomes due. So the other interesting thing, as Sherry mentioned, was that year over year, so the April numbers are out. You can go to REBGB, Real Estate Board Greater Vancouver.org, and see all those numbers. So sales in Metro or Greater Vancouver were down 40% in April. The Fraser Valley, they were down 50%, but the overall year over year price change was up 2.3%. Who knew? So, and I'll tell you why that's happening. Supply, there's no supply. So what happens is demand has gone down, but supply went with it. Like in the same, it didn't change, right? So supply went down and, demand went down, but supply came right down with it. So now you have less to choose from. So if you are a buyer, right, there's no deals. You only get the deals when that gap widens. Demand goes down, supply goes up. So we've seen a price increase, and 1 month is not enough to generate an identifiable trend. Okay, so it's in and of itself a weird month, and weird things have happened, and those are just the facts. We can only try to project what that means going forward. But as you can see, each economist has their own forecast for what could have. Is it a V shape? Is it a U shape? And all the real estate people are like, it's going to be a V, and by June we'll be fine. And then other people are like, I don't know, it could be 2022 before we really start pulling on. And there's going to be a recession, and it's going to take a long time. And the other thing that I personally think is there's going to be, when you print money on your little printing press and you hand out billions of dollars that aren't actually generated from any business. So those are just printed money that goes into the economy, and it wasn't based on production or a gross domestic product. Inflation. And nobody's really talking about that right now. And I think it's too scary to think maybe about what that might look like, hyperinflation, for us, because that money is going to need to be paid back at some point. We're going to be running huge deficits. So, I mean, this is all very long-term stuff and heady, and I'm not trying to be the, you know, the bearer of bad news, but these are the kind of things that I've been reading about and thinking about, wondering what that looks like. So right now, we're in the bubble. it's safe, and people are buying and selling. I got a new listing coming on Monday. I'm working with buyers right now, and there's no deals. Nobody's really budging too much on their prices, maybe a little. But I think we've got a couple months of that, and as soon as the free handouts are gone, we're going to see a different reality, right? So it's too soon to say, but those are so right now for all the deal seekers, there's no deals per se. You might find the odd person who's like, yes, I have to, right? But in general, Vancouver has a lot of money, okay? So there's people here, and I can't remember the numbers, I'm sure you can find it. A very large percentage of homeowners in Greater Vancouver own their homes outright, no mortgage, okay? So when you have that much wealth, you know, those people don't need to sell. And so when you have that much wealth or equity, you just tend to stay. You don't buy, you don't sell, you just stay in your home. So that's why Vancouver has always done, you know, we're impacted potentially less, like Victoria market. We don't really seem to, like 2008 came, by 2010, we were back on fire, right? So, but this, as Sherry mentioned, will be a recession, or is a recession created by different factors. It's a health-driven recession, not an economic one. And so is it the same as the others? Can you use previous benchmark data to forecast the outcome of this one? I have no idea. So those are my, you know, those are my points. Supply side, the demand, there's no, you know, the supply is even more constrained. Sales actually are back to, they said it's the lowest level since 82 or something. Like, that's how few sales are happening, but supply is down as well. So prices are insulated right now, and we'll just have to wait and see as people go back to their jobs. Are there jobs for them to go back to? What does that? And certain sectors, of course, have been more insulated than others. My husband works in IT, and he's never been busier. He's slammed. So so we'll see what it looks like. But I mean, I'm not really projecting doom and gloom. I don't think there's going to be a crash, but it might get. There might be an uncomfortable point when everybody's stuff comes due, I guess is what and at that point, we will really see what's going to happen in the market. So that's still several months away. I think we have the summer to kind of see how it's going. Yeah. So if anybody has any specific questions, I mean, I can provide data. I'm happy to share. Liza, I can send you that CIBC report. I'm kind of a nerd that way. I read a lot of nerdy stuff like that.
Feel free to post it on the WREN page as well, Tammy.
Okay.
And yeah, there's a couple things I made notes on there as well while you were talking. Foreclosures, right? I mean, I remember when I started, you know, really trying to study and learn about real estate, and you know, foreclosures are really big in the U.S. And I remember having a conversation with an economist here in BC, saying that the number of foreclosures in Canada is not even a line item on the budget, the federal budget, because it's so small. They don't even bother.
It's so small,
and it's still going to be small from predictions. The other thing too with foreclosures is because we're in this deferral period right now, then as people, you know, try to get back online, if there are any foreclosures, it's going to take 6 to 9 months for those processes.
Banks do not. Yes, banks, they don't want to foreclose. They don't want your property. It's a pain for them to have to sell it. So we're talking the effects are going to be a long time from now, maybe a year from now, right? Because I don't actually know, maybe Sherry, you know, but it does, you're right, Liza, it takes a long time for a bank to actually foreclose, and there may be more consideration or leniency given the situation. They're going to help people restructure, they're going to, whatever they're going to do. So I imagine.
I mean, You just have to think about it. If people have deferred their mortgage, that was 6 months. So that takes you to August. And then you have to be behind or default for another 3 months before the foreclosure process is begun. So that would take us into the late fall. So you'd be like into next year before it would actually start hitting the courts. Because the courts are also going to be backlogged. Remember, the courts have been closed. So all of the stuff that was there before still has to work its way through anyway on the court side. So by the time we get to January and February, hopefully they're kind of caught up.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, just in terms of timelines, you know, I've been hearing people say, oh, you know, there might be some opportunity in foreclosures, and it's like, well, there may be down the road, you know, that's going to be something that's not going to come for a while, and there's going to be all kinds of as you saw, you know, restructuring and whatever we can do to help avoid that. The other thing I wrote down, you know, panic selling, and I think that this is one of those things, you know, I wrote down in big letters, ask. One of the things that, you know, when you are in this situation, when you think that the only thing you're going to be able to do to save yourself is to sell your home or to, you know, I don't know, whatever it is that you have to do, like this is when you've got to learn to reach out and ask for help. And I've been watching, you know, some of my friends who have businesses who have said, hey, you know what, need to reach out and get some support here. And you know, I use the Why Yoga as an example. You know, a lot of people know the business Why Yoga. It's a hugely successful retail or yoga chain in all kinds of places across Canada. And I think they're in the US as well. And the president of Why Yoga is a friend of mine. And she, you know, she wrote an email and she said, you know, I'm not this type of person to ask for help for our business, but I have to. Like, we're a small company, we're Canadian, and we've restructured, and we're giving away yoga classes for $7.99 a month, and I need to put it out to the world so that people know that we want to stay in business, and we're not going to be able to do it without help. And I think that's the same for businesses and for us as people. We are going to go through some tough times, and we don't have to go alone. You know, this is again one of the reasons why we belong to networks like this, because your trusted tribe has your back. People are here for you. We want to know what you're going through. We want to know how we can help. You want the experts that are available to be able to help you make good decisions, so you don't end up panic selling, right? Or panic anything, right? Don't panic.
Don't panic.
Don't panic, just don't panic. Reach out for help, get the assistance you need, get the answers to the questions from experts and professionals, and you know that the things like foreclosures and the lawyers and the banks coming after you, it's going to be a while. You know, it's going to be a while before we get there. So I wrote a couple of those things down just to highlight there. The supply and demand thing, yeah, I mean, we, you know, with a 1% vacancy rate and 2% and 3% kind of in Vancouver and Victoria, we're still looking at the likelihood of supply, and with immigration, Canada, I think, is still going to be considered one of the safest places in the world, and possibly our level of safety because of our universal healthcare system is probably going to be elevated as we move through this crisis. I mean, we're a massively, you know, geographically large country with a 9,000 kilometer border, you know, that runs coast to coast. Lots of space where you can, you know, live in a community with not very many people. And there's going to be something to be said for that moving forward, for the safety of a country with a small population, a stable government, universal health care, you know, welcoming immigrants. Yes, there's definitely going to be some people that are like, don't let people in, you know, people are sick, but I think, you know, with proper screening and whatever policies they come up with, we're going to work through that. And yeah, I think if anything, Canada could see more people wanting to come here because we are going to be such a safe. So it's going to be interesting times. So cool. Anybody have any questions for Tammy or Sherry? As I said, I wrote down a couple things. Go ahead, Sherry.
On the immigration thing, I do also agree that, you know, our immigration will probably be slowed down you know, because the international borders will probably be one of the last things to be reopened as widely. But in Victoria, we're so stable. So out of all the immigration that comes to BC, we get 3%. So we're not a big immigration city, in all honesty. Vancouver gets impacted by immigration far more than we do, which you know, ultimately has a trickle-down effect to Victoria, because if people from Vancouver are selling their houses to immigrants to move here and they can't sell their house, then, you know, it has a trickle-down.
Yeah.
But direct, we're very, very insulated from that.
Yes. Yes, your foreign buyers are the buyers from Vancouver. We joke about the
Yeah.
foreign
We're the
buyers in
foreigners.
Victoria.
Yeah.
The foreign buyers who are coming across the pond are the Vancouverites who are moving to Victoria. I was one of them. You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
I moved from Vancouver to Victoria, and you know, I'm back in Vancouver for a while now. But that's, you know, really because I was traveling so much for business that it just made sense for me to be here. But I miss you, Victoria.
Yay.
So, yes, I definitely miss Victoria, but yeah, but things are good here too. So I think if there are any questions, just feel free to ask them. I'm going to move into my little rant now that I'm, you know,
I want to hear this.
And so,
Okay, get ready.
Yes, get ready. So over the last, gosh, we've been doing this now for, I don't know, almost 2 months. And one of the things that we keep talking about over and over and over and over again, relationships. Build your relationships and get shit done. Now is the time to get stuff done. And I want to get really personal here and just share a little bit of a story about yet another situation. This has happened to me, I think, 4 times in the last 6 months, where a friend's parent is dying and has made zero preparation, and the son is stuck with no will, no checks. The parent doesn't even have a checkbook, and he wanted to leave his grandchildren checks, and he can't even write them a goddamn check. No clear plan of how he wants his body to be handled when he passes away. No notice of, you know, where his stuff is, or if he has a safe deposit box. And so this poor gentleman who's like a brother to me, who I grew up with as a teenager in Toronto, has, you know, flown out and is stuck with trying to piece together this bullshit scenario that his dad has left him with. And I mean, maybe that sounds harsh, but we are in a position right now where we have time to write the will. We have time to speak to the experts. We have time to get a power of attorney. We have time to get your banking in order. We have time to, you know, take a sheet of paper and write down who's your lawyer, who's your doctor, you know, talk to your family about what your plans are for when you expire. Do you want to be buried? Do you want a ceremony? Do you want a memorial? Do you want to become a tree, right? Like, do you want your ashes scattered in the ocean? Do you have a living will? Do you want them to resuscitate you? All of these things are things that people, for some reason, find so much difficulty in talking about, but they are so important. And watching my friend go through the agony of trying to rush last minute as his dad is taking literally his dying breaths to find a lawyer in a foreign city that he's not familiar with. And, you know, thank goodness he had me and my mom and my uncle to, you know, help him out. But can we please just make an agreement? Like, can we pinky swear right here and now that we're going to get this shit taken care of? Because I don't want to keep doing this and being there for a friend or a family member who hasn't got their shit together. So I want to promise from all of you that not only will you get your own stuff taken care of, but you will talk to your friends and your family and people in your lives and talk about the importance of getting this done. And if you need some help or support, please reach out so that we can point you in the right direction. Sherry's got some great expertise on this. She's been an executrix, a seniors advocate, a financial planner, has been coaching me on helping some of these people that I've had to help over the last year. So Sherry, I'm super grateful. And I just want us to start taking responsibility for this. You know, I'm a live and let live and an action taker and a, you know, a live for every moment type of person. But I have some of my ducks in a row, right? My life insurance is done, and my living will is done, and people know, you know, if I get hit by a bus, what to do with me. And it's so important that we get that done. So how many people are with me? Tell me yes that you're going. Oh, Elisa's pinky sweared. Excellent, thank you.
Yes.
I've had a life will since I was 20 years old. Life is unpredictable. Excellent, thank you. Who else is going to get this stuff done? Tell me, because if you don't, I'm going to come track you down and make you get it done. And on that note,
Yeah.
one last thing is that we also had some sad news today. One of our real estate colleagues and someone who has been, you know, controversial and inspirational and interesting and passionate. For those of you who haven't heard the news yet, Stefan Arnio, a real estate investor who has had coaching programs across Canada and is out of Manitoba, has passed away today at the age of 33 from cancer. So that's my stuff for today. You know, a gentleman 33 years old who's died of cancer, and a friend of mine who's you know, the same age as me, who is looking after his dad, who didn't get his shit taken care of. Even though last year he was written off and was, you know, supposed to die in the hospital, he recovered, went home, and still didn't get his stuff done. So sit your parents down and get them straightened out. And if you need me to come over and talk to them, I will. So thank you for all the comments. Yes, I need to get that done for sure. All done and taken care of. Great. So please.
So important to have that done. And right? I run into people all the time who have not had it done. And it's like, it's not about you, because you're gone. You don't care.
Yeah.
It's about what are you leaving the people behind to deal with on top of a normal grieving process.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so all that happens is their grieving gets postponed.
Yeah.
Right? You can't grieve while you're, you know, dealing with all of this stuff. So yeah, it is so important. Rick and I always have had like power of attorney, wills, and direct health directives, you know, or personal representation agreement, they call it now. And even like when COVID came out, we went, oh, now's a good time. We have some time. Let's just review what we have and make sure it's what we want. So even if you have done it, like, you know, review it sometimes, because your life changes, right?
You might have another grandchild. In Sherry's case. Yes. So yes, I love it. I'm getting I'm getting documents ready. Yeah, make it easy for your family. Absolutely. So, you know, watching, and again, this is, you know, 3 or 4 times in the last year, watching people in the person who's passing, as Sherry mentioned, watching them go through the stress of having to clean up your life, right? It's hard to watch. I mean, it's, you know, they got to get taxes done, and they've got to clean apartments or mobile homes or trailers or vehicles or bank accounts or safe deposit box. And yeah, it's heartbreaking.
And then for those of us who are getting into real estate investing, you might have corporations, you might have properties. Like, do people know where everything is? Where are those mortgages for those properties? If it's a corporation, who are all the shareholders? Where are the documents kept? Because now you're leaving shares become part of your estate, but maybe there's stuff in there. If you're building, for example, and you have a building in process and you die, what happens to that project? Like, there's so many things. Like, don't just forget about it.
Yeah.
You know, you could walk outside and get hit by a bus. You don't have to get COVID-19 to die.
And logins to all your accounts. What's the password?
Yeah.
I don't even know my own password. I mean, I can't keep my own 5,000 emails and passwords and whatever straight, but printing that sheet out or having it somewhere for your significant other or whoever is in your life. So the password.
Your executor know where it is.
Yes.
Don't have it locked in a safety deposit box.
Unless they have a key. Yeah.
You know, and on logins, right? Like, use something secure like LastPass. right? Like all of my passwords are in a an online secure vault. And so if somebody has the password to that and they have all the information, they can get in and see those passwords, right? What do you want done with your Facebook and your social media accounts, right? I mean, today on Stefan Arnio's Facebook page, it's everybody, sending condolences, and we're like, what? Like, he's 33 years old. Are you kidding me? He's just passed away. It's crazy. So that's my rant for today.
I still get, happy birthday on Facebook to someone who passed away like 3 years ago. His wife hasn't deactivated his Facebook account or his LinkedIn. So I kept getting, every year I would get like, happy birthday, XYZ. And I'm like, ooh, that needs to be, because I don't think if you contact Facebook, they won't deactivate an account based on that. I'm not sure, but I've heard that. So it's just far reaching, all the social media.
I think with Facebook, you can actually, they have a place now where you can basically set up how you want your accounts to be when you pass. It's the legacy of your account or something. So
Gotcha.
That's one I have to check off, have to look at that. So hopefully that is, hopefully that's, not too upsetting to everybody, but I'm just really, I think it's just, it's a fact of life. We're all going to face it at some point or another. And the cleaner we can make it for ourselves and our friends and family, take that stress away. I mean, we're all living in stressful times. We have lots of things that we have to deal with, and if we can lessen the stress, especially of our friends and family, we don't want our friends and family going through more stress than they already do. Let's get that stuff sorted out. So, here we go. There's a couple of questions and answers here. So we'll just go through some of these and then we'll sign off for today. So let me just see. Facebook will memorialize the account. There you go. Personal health. Let me just, yes, personal health is so important. The health, wealth, and self conversation that we have a lot. You've got to invest in yourself and your health if you plan on investing in your wealth, and that kind of all works together. Life insurance, check your beneficiaries. Yes, a good note. Some people forget to check their beneficiaries. They've had their parent as a beneficiary, a parent has died, and then what do you do? So let's just see what else is in here. Yes, a binder of important documents. Yep, excellent. Also important for elderly wives and husbands, and not just parents. It's important for everybody, right? I mean, using Stefan again as an example, 33 years old, but he had multiple corporations, multiple properties. So, this is stuff that we have to do for everyone. I mean, children, adult children, family members, friends. We've got to, use this time wisely to get these things, check marked off. So I think we've covered it all. And I've got one question from Michelle. Sherry, can you recommend someone in Victoria? Michelle, just let me know what you're looking for Sherry to recommend. You can do that, and I can do that. I can connect you.
If you're looking for estate law, I can certainly recommend a lawyer. If you're looking to sort of put everything in order, you might want to see a financial planner who can look at your estate stuff, and then you take this to the lawyer and this to the accountant. Sometimes as a financial planner, I was sort of like a general practitioner or a GP doctor, and then you send them off to the specialist once you get the whole picture. So depending on what you're wanting for, yes, I can certainly give you recommendations. So my email is ckrause@shaw.ca, which is CCRAUSE@shaw.ca. Send me an email and I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, and getting a will done is not very expensive. I mean, Shane managed to get an emergency will done, and including the hospital visit, it was $750 to get the will done and have the lawyer come to the hospital, right? So, he had to do that while his dad was like barely conscious, but his dad managed to wake up long enough to sign the will. Like, what kind of a miracle is that, right? Like, that's insane. So yes, in terms of incorporations, yeah, again, speaking to the right lawyer. I know on our side, you know, we've worked with Dave Putinen with RealFile. He's out in Toronto, but he has clients all over Canada, and he comes out to Victoria and Vancouver at least a couple times a year. Tax strategy and legacy for incorporations and people who have, you know, portfolios of property. So Dave's been great with helping people set that up from a tax perspective, and then passing it on to the right people to close it down or pass it on. Tammy, anything that you want to add to that?
No, I've gone through it myself with my mom. She did have a will, but she didn't leave any final instructions for anything, which sort of left it up to me, I was the executrix. But unfortunately, I have a brother and sister, so it got a little, you know, I was calling the shots, and now everybody's kind of wondering. So yeah, it is good to have that stuff sorted out before.
Yeah, exactly. And Barbara says she has a notary, Beverly Carter, who does a lot of wills and estate planning. And Barb, is she in Victoria? That's Beverly Carter. Yeah, so notary can do a will as well. Yes,
yeah.
in Victoria,
I know this is going to go against a lot of grain for people, but if you are at all complicated, and complications can be a blended family, stepchildren, it doesn't even have to be real estate or corporations, I would suggest you go to a lawyer to have this drawn, because a lawyer can give you an advice and a notary cannot. That is the law. So that's the major difference between a notary and a lawyer, is they can't give advice. And I would suggest, unless you are really, really clear and you know enough to go in and say, this is what I want, and you're not going to be asking or needing any advice, I would not use a notary for a will.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Transactions, use them all the time.
Yeah.
But
that makes
for
lots of
legal
sense.
issues or things that are a little sticky in regards to estates, I would not. That's just my personal experience.
It totally makes sense, Sherry, because yeah, I mean, if you've got, you know, if you've got shareholders and you've got multiple properties, or you've got siblings, or you've got anything, like you say, complicated, you want some advice. I mean, that's, you know, that big circle that I wrote down today, right? Like my big thing that I wrote down today, you can see right in the middle, ask, right? This is another thing.
BC has a wonderful thing called the Wills Variation Act, which means that you cannot disinherit a child, even if you want to. What constitutes a child? What constitutes a spouse? When does someone have rights? We have people who die all the time who are still married to someone else, but have been living with this other person. Who's the one that has the rights? If you're still legally married to someone, but having a common law relationship that might be 20 or 30 years, that person is in trouble if you don't have a will.
And stepchildren, I don't think stepchildren can contest a will either.
No,
yeah,
stepchildren cannot.
So they have to be, looked after in the will.
Yeah. So there's lots of little things that people don't think about. They just think, oh, well, it'll just go to so-and-so when I'm dead. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not, exactly. And you don't want it going to the government.
Yeah.
Right? Do we want it to go somewhere where it's going to be appreciated or at least productive? Don't give your money to the government.
Yeah, for sure.
So there we go. All right. Well, we're just at 5:06. We go about 5 minutes over.
I need to go.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's right. You have a showing, don't you? So
I do.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen on the call. Thank you for your questions and your interaction, and we're all going to get our paperwork taken care of, and I'm going to hear lots of reports of people getting their shit done. So let me know when you've got stuff done, and if you've got some great people to share and resources, please feel free to share those. So we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll see you next week.